The air is different when he's on the ice. It's not just the sound of skates cutting into the frozen surface or the slap of a puck on tape, it's a palpable tension that hums through the arena. You can feel it in the stands, a nervous energy that has every fan leaning forward, watching not for a pretty goal, but for the moment chaos erupts. The game within the game is about to begin, and it's ruled by men who aren't just players, they're enforcers, they're predators, they are the absolute scariest figures to ever lace up a pair of skates. We're not just talking about tough guys. We're talking about the legends whose names were whispered in locker room tunnels, the ones whose mere presence on the bench could change an opponent's entire game plan. These are the players who didn't just fight, they instilled pure, unadulterated fear. And today, we're counting down the 5 most terrifying players in NHL history. Trust me, you do not want to meet any of these men in a dark alley, or a well-lit rink. Before we unveil our list of hockey's most feared, make sure you're locked in. We dive deep into the stories and the highlights that made these legends so intimidating. If you live for NHL drama, rivalries, and the raw, unfiltered side of hockey history, you're in the right place. Please like, share, and subscribe for more NHL content. Kicking off our list is a man who was less a hockey player and more a force of nature. Standing at 6'5" and weighing over 240 pounds, Zdeno Chara was a living skyscraper on skates. His reach wasn't just an advantage, it was a weapon. But it wasn't just his size that was frightening, it was the calm, cold demeanor. He never needed to showboat or scream. He would just look at you with those icy eyes, and you knew you were in the presence of a predator who could end your night with one clean, brutal hit. Imagine being a forward cutting across the blue line with your head down. You hear the gasps of the crowd before you see the shadow falling over you. You look up, and all you see is the number 33 on a massive chest plate. That's the last thing many players saw before waking up wondering what train hit them. Chara didn't just defend his net, he policed an entire zone, and his mere presence was the law. Next up, we have Bob Probert. The name alone sends a shiver down the spine of anyone who remembers the blood-soaked battles of the Norris Division. Probert was the undisputed heavyweight champion of his era, a man who could change the complexion of a game with his fists. But what made him truly terrifying was his dual-threat capability. This wasn't just a goon, Probert had soft hands and could actually score, making him the most dangerous kind of enforcer, the one you couldn't ignore when he had the puck, and the one you desperately wanted to ignore when he didn't. I'm telling you, watching Probert drop the gloves was like watching a ritual. The helmet would come off, the gloves would hit the ice, and a hush would fall over the crowd. It wasn't a fight, it was an execution. He had a mean streak a mile wide and a right hand that could fracture bone. Forwards would think twice about touching Steve Yzerman, because they knew the reckoning that wore number 24 was already skating toward them from the Red Wings bench. Now, you might be thinking you know who's next. But I promise you, our next entry will shock you. This isn't just about the sheer number of fights, it's about the aura, the legend, and a moment so brutal it's seared into hockey history. We're talking about Marty McSorley. McSorley was the ultimate bodyguard. As the protector of Wayne Gretzky, first in Edmonton and then in Los Angeles, his job description was simple: you touch 99, you answer to me. And he was ruthlessly efficient at his job. He was strong, relentless, and knew his role better than anyone. But the incident that cemented his terrifying legacy, the one that goes beyond tough guy bravado, was the infamous stick-swinging incident on February 21, 2000. I remember watching this live, and my jaw literally dropped. It was Vancouver. McSorley, then with the Bruins, and Donald Brashear had a running feud. The game was almost over, and the tension was boiling over. McSorley skates up behind Brashear, and in a moment of pure, shocking violence, he swings his stick like a baseball bat, connecting with Brashear's head. Brashear collapses to the ice, unconscious. The entire arena went silent, then erupted in horror. That wasn't hockey. That was an assault. And in that moment, McSorley wasn't seen as a tough guy, he was seen as a dangerous man who had crossed a line from which there was no return. The legal system even got involved. It was the moment the enforcer code was shattered on national television, and it made McSorley one of the most infamous, and scariest, figures to ever play the game. Closing in on our top 2, we find a man whose nickname says it all. Tiger Williams. Dave Tiger Williams sits atop the NHL's all-time penalty minutes list, and he earned every single second of it. But it wasn't just the quantity, it was the quality of his chaos. Tiger didn't just fight you, he celebrated beating you with a wild, manic energy that was somehow more frightening than the fight itself. Picture this. The gloves are off, the fight is a whirlwind of fists, and Tiger gets the best of his opponent. As the linesmen move in, he doesn't just skate away. He mounts his stick like a horse and rides it down the ice, a wild grin on his face, staring down the opposing bench. It was a level of psychological warfare the league had never seen. He wasn't just trying to win a fight, he was trying to break your spirit and humiliate you in front of your home crowd. That kind of crazy is genuinely terrifying. And now, the moment you've been waiting for. The number 1 spot. The most feared man to ever step onto an NHL rink. Before we name him, just think about the criteria: size, skill, ferocity, and an aura that could silence an entire stadium. There is one name, and one name only, that embodies all of it. The undisputed king of fear. At the very top of the mountain, it's the man they called the Great One's shadow, but whose legacy of violence stands entirely on its own: Dave Semenko. I can hear the arguments already. But he wasn't the most skilled. He wasn't the biggest puncher. You're missing the point. Dave Semenko was so terrifying, his sole purpose was to make sure no one dared to touch Wayne Gretzky. And for years, no one did. Semenko was the guardian angel from hell. He was the final word, the ultimate deterrent. His reputation was his weapon. Players knew that if they so much as looked at Gretzky the wrong way, they would have to answer to Semenko. And answering to Semenko meant a one-way ticket to the dentist. He was the league's official heavyweight champion during his peak, and he fought every other enforcer to a standstill or worse. But the story that cements his number 1 spot isn't even from a hockey game. It's from a boxing ring. In 1979, Semenko famously fought, and knocked down, the legendary heavyweight champion of the world, Muhammad Ali, in an exhibition match. Let that sink in. He stood toe-to-toe with the greatest, and held his own. What chance did any NHL tough guy have? Imagine being an opposing player. You see Gretzky circling, setting up for a play. You see Semenko lurking on the wing, his eyes locked not on the puck, but on you. The calculation was simple: is taking a run at 99 worth having my face rearranged by the one guy who traded blows with Ali? The answer was almost always a resounding no. That is the pinnacle of fear. It's not about what he did, it's about what he prevented anyone else from even thinking about doing. The legends of these men are woven into the very fabric of the NHL. They were a different breed, from a different time. They operated by a code that seems almost mythical now, a code of honor and violence that protected the stars and settled scores in a way that a 2-minute minor never could. Think about the psychological warfare. It wasn't just about dropping the gloves. It was the stare from Chara. It was the crazy celebration from Tiger Williams. It was the silent, looming presence of Semenko. These players got inside their opponents' heads before a single punch was ever thrown. They won battles before they even began. The game has changed, of course. The era of the pure enforcer is fading into history. The speed and skill of today's NHL don't always have room for a player whose main job is to fight. But that doesn't make the legacy of these titans any less significant. In fact, it makes them more legendary. They were the guardians of their time. They were the ones who ensured that skilled players could work their magic without having their heads taken off on every shift. They were the lawmen in a lawless land, and their brand of justice was swift, brutal, and decisive. So the next time you watch a game and see a clean, open ice hit, or a skilled player dance through the defense untouched, remember the ghosts of the players who came before. Remember the fear that men like Semenko, McSorley, and Probert instilled. That freedom for the superstars was paid for in blood and knuckles. These 5 players represent the absolute peak of intimidation in the world's fastest and toughest sport. They were the boogeymen of the ice, the stories told to young players to warn them about the consequences of crossing the line. Their legacies are built on respect, fear, and an undeniable, Raw power that may never be seen again in the NHL. So who did we miss? Which name sends a chill down your spine when you see it in the history books? Let us know in the comments below, and debate the toughest of all time. Thanks for watching, and remember, keep your head up out there. This has been a look at the 5 scariest players in NHL history.